Hey guys, we're gonna be making Snake. This is a simple project, but I want to fill out my channel with simple projects before moving on to more complex projects. So, first thing we're gonna do is create a new file, and then I'm gonna fill it with most of the boilerplate for Pygame. And I'm just gonna create a simple window. And then after I create the window, I'm gonna basically create my base face and food and snake classes. And I'm gonna fill out my food class first because it's simple. It's just a X and Y position and a color. And it has two methods, a pick pause method and a draw method, which actually draws it to the Pygame screen. So they were both relatively straightforward to do, but a problem I had with my pick pause method was I had no idea how to grid it on like a 10 by 10 grid. So I did some Googling around after, I got it to pick a random position. I wanted to try to pick it a gridded position. So I tried a bunch of strategies, I Googled a lot of stuff, but that's what this next section is about really. It's just me trying to find a way to grid it. And over here I start Googling stuff. I didn't find a solution, unfortunately, but eventually I came up with a solution to just, while the end is not 0, minus it by 1. So eventually it will become 0, and anything with 0 is automatically divisible by 10. So any point that ends in a 0 is automatically on a 10 by 10 grid. So as you can see here, I'm implementing the solution that I thought of right now. And then you can see how gridded it is. Okay, so next thing I had to do was work on my snake class, which was an XY, and it had a color, it had a direction, and it had like a list of previous positions, which would make up the tail of the snake. So I had to create a move function, which was relatively straightforward to do. I actually had trouble with my approach and I had to restart, but right now it is working. So in order for the snake to be on a 10 by 10 grid, the snake has to move 10 pixels each time, and that's way too fast. So I tried to modify my move function to make it work, but we'll get more into that later. Right now I'm just trying to get it to like draw to the screen and move. So it turns out I had my inserts flipped, and I got it to work. And you probably can't see the snake because it goes way too fast, which is a problem I had. And obviously the easiest way to fix that was just to make the screen bigger, which I did. Eventually I settled on a size about 600 by 600. And then what I tried to do was implement a system where there would be like a set value it moves, and I would only draw it once that set value is over 10. I won't go in depth about the solution because it didn't work. But basically, I was just adding the position by a certain amount and only drawing it when the position was 10. So that way, there was always something necessary. So like, it had to go through like 3 or 4 iterations before it was finally divisible by 10. And this worked for the time being, but it started getting wonky when I was implementing my key system. Another thing I did right now is what I'm doing is I'm basically, instead of having separate variables for the X and Y and separate variables for the direction on the X and Y, I'm turning it all into an XY list. So because with the snake it was actually getting pretty redundant to type out self.dir x, self.dir y. So I also changed this on the food as well to keep it consistent, which was actually pretty redundant to do because, you know, self.x and y for the food is perfectly fine. And after I did this change, I started making keyboard input. I did some Googling because I had no idea how to get Pygame keys. I don't work extensively with Pygame. And around this time, I was having trouble with my keyboard input based on my previous movement system. I have no idea what was wrong, but for the down, it just wouldn't work on the down, and every time you turned, there would always be some lag. So I tried everything to try to fix my previous movement system. It just wasn't working. You could probably see on the screen that it was glitching. Eventually, you know, I found a pretty hacky solution, which after some experimenting and trying different things, I eventually just put a time.sleep in there, and that just slowed it down perfectly, and so I could basically have it move 10 pixels, but since the frame rate was lower, it would be pretty slow. And I thought this would make it unresponsive, but it was actually perfectly responsive. So yeah, here you see me importing time and sleeping it. And right now it's working perfectly. It's perfectly slow. So it's pretty hacky of a solution because I just slowed down the frame rate, but Snake is a pretty retro game, so that really won't matter. Next, what I had to do was make it pick up the food, which was just a simple as easy as comparing the two positions. I was having some trouble, but eventually I just figured it out. So as you can see, it's picking up the food perfectly. Next, I had to make it so, like, if you're moving right, you can't just turn and move your snake left, because in reality, if you did that, you can't actually do that in the Snake game. And here I'm just playing around, because right now you don't die if you intersect yourself, and I thought it'd be pretty fun to do that, because eventually I'm gonna have to make it intersect itself and die. So I was like, oh, do it while you can. So as you can see, the Snake game is pretty much complete. I also added a thing an if statement which checked if it's out the screen, which you can see me adding right here. And finally, I added a game over font. I started adding game over text, which was pretty cool. Right now, I had to do some Googling to get this to work. And one of the issues I had was I was just drawing the text and I was just killing the program. So I forgot to actually update the screen using pygame.display.render. So right here you can see pygame.display.flip. I forgot that, and now if I did it, it worked perfectly. And after I fixed that small error, I just started messing around with formatting and stuff, and that worked pretty well. And then next, what I had to do was create a separate die function because I wanted to call it multiple times and it was a lot of text. And then I looped through all the positions in the tail and I checked if it intersected itself, and it worked perfectly. So that was a pretty simple project, but like I said, I want to do simple projects first on my channel before I start moving into the complex stuff. So this is a pretty simple project, and I hope it gets you introduced to my channel. It took me like a long time to make, but I have things planned like cellular automata, ray tracing, and you know, 3D engines, physics simulation, Neat Python, and Cartpool Gym AI, you know, stuff like that planned. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully you'll want to see more content. This is my snake game. I think it turned out pretty well. I'll have the code in the GitHub source in the description. Bye.